As corporate leaders decide how and where to incorporate AI in their businesses, the question is, how can they do this responsibly? Join me as we discuss topics like AI use cases, how to evaluate the ROI of AI, the environmental impact and managing that impact of AI, and so many more in this episode. Hello, team. Good to see you, and welcome to Truth to Impact podcast.
Nice to be here. And great to meet you, Timmy.
Good. So, why don't you start with AI? What's the evolution of AI? How did you get here?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people don't know the origins of it. So it actually came out of the 1950s and Turing, where we started doing rule-based AI with physical machines. Then we moved into machine learning, which came out of the labs through IBM. And now we've got to generative AI models, which is actually how do we use machines to learn language. And we've got to commercializing it today, which is through examples like ChatGPT.
Right. So, basically, starting from machine learning down to AI.
Well, actually, it's AI that was the beginning part, and then machine learning followed after, and then we got to deep learning, and then we got to generative AI. Yeah.
And how about your journey in this space?
So it's 20 years now in this space. I started out with building architectures from the ground up with databases and building on-premise solutions with servers, and then gradually moving into data centers and then building virtual environments that businesses could access and build at scale. And now obviously we have the cloud. And through that journey, it's been a combination of building things, but then evolving myself into, well, how do you think about integrating AI into your workforce, into business workflows? And now to today, which is, well, how do you think about that from an agentic AI sense, which is the new buzzword on the town at the moment.
Yeah. So, what's the difference between AI agents? Because I heard there's a difference between AI agents and agentic AI. Am I correct?
That is a great question because people conflate it.
Right.
So I'll take AI agents, and there's a lot of talk on, I would say, LinkedIn at the moment, where look at all these design patterns with your LLMs, and this is how you build the agent. I think a lot of people get confused that the LLM is not the agent. It is just a guessing machine at the end of the day that is going across the internet to pull information, and then it presents back what it's been, what it's found based on what it's been asked to do through a prompt. And all that's happened really is the agent piece that's come along is we've just stuck rule-based workflow, linear workflow over the top of LLMs, and people class that as an agent because it can just plug into calendars and customer relationship management systems, links into the LLM and says, like, now use all of this information and now speed up. So that is I would say it's the human interaction in terms of that side of it. On the agentic side, we're talking about first principles, building enterprise level solutions, which is in the heart of an organization's technology stack and their data. And essentially, what an agentic system is basically code that is wrapped around an LLM. And it can be any LLM. It could even be a company has actually got their own LLM, so they don't need to use ChatGPT. They don't need to use any of the other ones. They've actually trained it themselves on their own business data. And then they have been able to scale that LLM across their business. And that's an agentic system that they could just plug into maybe a Slack interface or a Teams interface. And as long as they've got what they call a systems prompt, which is what do you want it to do in its role, and then a user prompt, ask it something, then that system starts to come alive.
Okay. So in my head, I'm thinking, so agentic AI is more around the infrastructure. Am I correct? And AI agents is more around using it as a tool.
Yeah. So both of them are agents. This is where I think people get confused. Is that the way the way I would say sort of the agentic bit is it's the heart of your business. It's you could say the technology and the enterprise architecture side. The other one is, I mean, the way I'll describe it is it's your low code, no code solutions, quick and dirty, stick it in, and then you get up and going, and you do. The trouble with it is it's not scalable, and anyone buying into a low code, no code, will get to a certain point where they'll have to switch over and go to an enterprise architecture approach, which is, my advice to organizations is if you are going to go down the road of agents, go down the agentic system road, because you want to build up within your business's workflows and its data that lives inside your business. You don't want to it's like a sticky plaster over the top that you want to avoid. Yeah.
So in terms of what you do, how do you help your clients from an AI perspective?
Yeah. So one of the things that we have spotted very early and why Synaptic Solutions exist is that we don't talk about the AI. We actually talk about two sides of the coin, and this actually sort of links nicely to sustainability, which is what's happening for a business and what's happening in a business. So for a business, they are all about, well, I have investors, I have shareholders in the boardroom, I have to be showing revenue. So I'm also being asked, but you need to get AI in as well. So what we talk about first of all is well, what efficiencies are you trying to make, and where are the opportunities to unlock what we call latent capacity to start to release some of that time that's being wasted, that's burning into your revenue, and then how do we realize that in AI, that cost, and then within the company, it's then, okay, so now we're talking about people. The challenge I think a lot of companies have that we've seen today is that there is fear mongering. Oh, I don't want to use AI, it's going to take my job.
Right.
You've got IT people going, oh, these LLMs. Oh, and hang on, we're a sovereign environment. We're not going to stick stuff through an LLM. I don't understand it because it's a black box. There's huge confusion there. But I also think there has been, the only way I can describe it is laziness occurred in companies over the last 15 years because of the hyperscaling is what I'll call it, of cloud. You must go cloud without asking the question, but why? Why? And so I think, what we see is that there is an education piece here for executives, which is what is the problem you're really trying to solve on your revenue side, and your releasing of unlocking of latent capacity, and then what are you trying to do with your staff? Where are you trying to move them to release that human, I suppose, capital is what I'll call it,
Right.
to not get rid of them as members of staff, but actually go and stick them on some more of the complicated problems within your organization that are just actually the more important things you should be solving, where you've got all that talent just doing very manual tasks that AI could do.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how we approach it, really, when we're talking to them about it.
Right.
What we focus on is the outcome. What is the outcome you're trying to do? Well, one side, I need to show that I'm scaling profits. I have to show it. And number two, I have to show that I'm getting AI in my business and that we are creating a competitive edge against our other competitor industries. And we've got those two things. But the real value is actually how am I creating, as an outcome, repeatable expertise in my business. So a big problem in organizations that we've seen, and over the many years, and I don't know, when you come into a new job, for an example, is knowledge bleed. Can you take over from this person? Oh, where are the notes from their previous job? What am I taking? They've gone. There aren't any notes. Go and work it out for yourself. Or if you're lucky, you've had a bit of shadowing with the person who's just about to leave, which is a bit of a luxury, and they do a bit of a handover, but you're still not going to know everything. When we think about AI, and specifically agentic AI, what that can do, because the way it's built, is you can store the memories of the previous person's role in the agentic system. So that now means that actually you don't need to invest in loads of heavy sort of cloud migration infrastructure to do huge data migrations. You don't have to hold people accountable for make sure your data is stored in before you leave your job. What you've got now is a very sort of iterative process, which is the outcome here, which is as the user uses the AI, they're storing knowledge in the agentic system. So the agentic system is a bit like a memory bank, a bit like your brain. And so it's storing long-term memory, short-term memory, and like what we're doing right now in a conversation we're having an in-the-moment conversation. That is what agentic AI can do, and that is the outcome that it is. So it's not so focused on, well, yeah, the agentic AI is the tool, right? But the outcome is actually repeatable expertise. Plus, I've released latent capacity from, well, I don't need to put my staff there. I can put them more here. And now what I've got is I've got a new commodity in my business, quality data and content that is a new strategic moat against my competitors. And I've also released money that is showing an increase in revenues because I'm not spending it on dead manual tasks. And a common one within business is actually onboarding customers, repeat contracts, researching for negotiations in sales. That could all be agentically driven because that's where a lot of companies are at the moment because of the way that we live in the world, which is SaaS-based, B2B contracting, B2C, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So AI is definitely transforming businesses, as we've seen in some cases. It would be nice to discuss some of the, use cases, compelling use cases that you've seen.
So I think definitely some of the common case studies that we're coming across now is basically contracting renewals and negotiating contracts. This is particularly pertinent within organizations that have large sales teams who are selling SaaS-based solutions on a B2B level. So I'll take an example of companies that are selling in fraud detection systems or fraud verification systems that companies now need, because if they are not performing verifications within regulatory compliance, then they can be hugely fined. But what tends to happen in that sales cycle at the moment is that through the year of a contract, there's probably customer disgruntledness. There might have been up or down times on SLA agreements. There may have been breaches within the contracts, and all of this sort of accumulates over the year that might sit in a CRM system. It might sit in emails. It might sit in sales managers' heads. And then when it comes around to that renewal time of that contract, all of that has to be aggregated, put into the reports, research done by that sales manager. That time is taken away from their job and they're not making sales. So if you go up to the camp of in the boardroom, the CEO and the CFO, why am I not making money? I'm eating into my revenue now. So one of the use cases that we've seen at the moment is actually how do you release those inefficiencies around that research time? And could AI actually do that work of that research piece alone and prepare a negotiation strategy for my sales manager where our more growth accounts to grow the business? So I've now met my investor ask of grow your revenues, get AI in.
Right. So let's just take a step back in terms of business leaders. So I'm sure business leaders will be under pressure to say there is a lot going on with AI. I now need to get involved. In your perspective, when should, maybe the question is not when, the question is how, you know, so how should we use AI in our organization? So for a business leader, what should be the trigger? What should they be looking out for in terms of AI consideration?
Yeah. So I think, again, I'm going to take it back to money. It's my CFO's jumping up and down going, my OPEX costs are just going through the roof and it's eating into revenues. That is the trigger point to go, actually, have we got inefficiencies in the business, in our business workflows? That's when we can start having a conversation about, okay, well, where's it hurting? Where's it hurting the wallet now? And where's it hurting your difficult conversations with your stakeholders, your shareholders, your investors? What are the primary use cases that you see that actually, do you know what? I think that could be done with AI. I think that could be done with AI. And then we start unpacking, but why? And then we go down the very important road of, where's your data? Because it's the garbage in, garbage out problem that we don't want to create for you, because AI is heavily invested at the front end, at the very beginning of projects. But actually over time, what you want to get to is you want to get to a cost margin of 0, because you don't want to keep on repeating and keep creating infrastructure. Build once, scale many is kind of the way that I say it. So it's very much driven by that conversation about where's it hurting on the money side. And then the other side of it is then back to my point around, actually, well, where are your staff? Are they, have they been put in a situation where, no fault of their own, the business has become, it's become digitally driven. It's made the staff very lazy, where they live in spreadsheets or they live in systems and they've created data silos. That is an inefficiency in itself. So where I've seen where it's gone really badly for businesses is, we'll just do a big data migration. And that's not the answer. Let's take the use cases that link to revenue and latent capacity release. Now let's look at, well, where's the data for that? And look at the common use cases that share the same data. How can we start building something at an infrastructure level that addresses 10 use cases, and start with one to pilot test that and see whether it actually work, and we can get adoption with users, and start there. So that's generally sort of our starting point with it to talk about the education piece. And you'll notice that it's not all about, let's start with, well, where do you think AI is going to plug in? Because you just can't plug it in. It's not like a magic switch. And there we go. I've integrated it. It doesn't work that way.
I think that brings me to my next point in terms of the pitfalls, right? So what I get from this conversation is that AI is not always the answer. Sometimes it could be with the culture, and sometimes it could be with just the data set. How are you even getting insights from the data? So let's talk about some of the common pitfalls that you've seen from your experience.
So the common pitfalls I've seen, and it was, a recent client that I sort of said, we bought SAP, we bought ERP, we bought Salesforce, and we've done the integrations, but no one's using it.
Right.
Okay. Do you know what problem you were trying to solve and what you were trying to do with revenue? No. I was just asked to integrate AI, but I've done that and it doesn't work. And that's a very technology sort of led approach, which is, let's just buy in the latest toys and hope it works. The fundamental thing with this is that it's about change management, organizational, target operating model assessment. I always sort of say to CEOs is that, it's either use language of, what's the vision, what's the North Star, what's the last mile, where we went from here, we go to there. Okay, so if we've got that there now, that visioning, and we help executives think about framing that, right? So let's now break that all into miles. How do we build the first mile to make sure that foundation helps you build the next 10 miles, next 20 miles, next 30 miles to then get to your last mile there? And then what's the shift that needs to happen? And generally what happens is They start with, I want to build the last mile first. And that's where it all collapses. Because your people don't move with you. And they're still drowning in the BAU, and then you're telling them to use this AI, and it's just, they're overwhelmed because they're not educated and they don't know. So I do hear a lot of complaining, not another prototype and not another POC.